Last Dance Recap. Episodes 7 and 8 on Running Up the Score. Now here's your hosts, Jerry Napoleonello and Kevin Donlin.
What time is it? Dance.
All right, we are back. Jerry Napoleonello running up the score. The Last Dance Recap Show. We got episodes 7 and 8. This documentary has been absolutely fascinating thus far, and we still have 2 more episodes to go. Episodes 7 and 8, we saw a whole different side of Michael Jordan, and I have to say, I loved every minute of it. We saw the behind-the-scenes teammate point of view, and we also saw the raw emotion Michael in this one, and we'll discuss everything so far that we saw in 7 and 8. First, obviously, no Kevin Donlin here. Again, it's all about schedule, and especially with what's going on. I hope everybody is being safe. I hope everything's going well with everybody. Hopefully, nothing's going wrong in everybody's lives. Obviously, it sucks to be stuck in the house, and either not working or working from home, this and that. It sucks. And I am so grateful for ESPN for, expediting this, having this happen earlier than it was supposed to. And, everybody's been on the edge of their seat watching this. And if you haven't, then obviously you're a LeBron fan. And I don't know what else to tell you. And I'm a Lakers fan. I mean, this is the greatest of all time, Michael Jordan. Nobody's going to touch this. And in this episode, these 2 episodes, you see that. You see the mental part of it and the mental draining part of what has happened throughout this whole dynasty with the Chicago Bulls. So first we'll start off, with his father. Now, if you look at every single thing that Michael Jordan has done well, and, whether it be championships, MVPs, just being in the NBA altogether, whenever you saw a big thing going on in Michael Jordan's life, the one person that you saw was James Jordan, Michael Jordan's father. He literally took everything great in his life and he brought his father along with him. His father, he was the driving force behind what Michael was doing when he was younger. It was, Michael was trying to show his father that, he can do this stuff and he could be, he can make him proud and everything like that. And, the bond that he had with his dad was unmatched, and you saw that. And continuously he tried to make his father proud. And when you see, everything leading up to, James Jordan's murder, you see the change in Michael after that. And the outlook on everything that, he had going on, especially in the NBA. And, they go right from the murder, and that was right around the 93 year after they won the championship. And Michael Jordan shocks the world and retires from the NBA in his prime. I mean, there's nothing. I mean, at that time, obviously, I wasn't of age to even know what was going on. And I think that's what makes this more, even more fascinating, because it's like, yeah, Michael Jordan, everything that came with Michael Jordan, the background of, everything that was going on because of just, just being a sports fan. I mean, that's how it was with me. Like, I didn't get to see Michael's great years. I mean, I saw the tail end of, his great years, with between like 90, 97. I would say around 96 to 98. I got to see probably the last 3 that Michael Jordan won. just because I was into sports at that time. I was 6 or 7, and I was watching the Yankees. Obviously, the Yankees winning a World Series in '96 and then '98. So I was a big sports fan even at that age. So yeah, I got to see like the tail end of it, but the behind the scenes or the stuff off the court, yeah, I wasn't in tune with it. So I knew that his father had passed away, being murdered. But everything behind it, everything leading up to it, I don't remember him being missing. I don't remember the stuff leading up to that. And I don't even remember Michael Jordan retiring because it just wasn't like it didn't click at that time. Obviously until you see, Space Jam. But, he shocks the world. And this is literally at the peak of their dynasty. We talk about, maybe if they would have kept it together, would have won 7? Who knows? But you know what? If he didn't retire, they might have even had the 7 by that time. So you don't know. He leaves, after the 93 finals. The Bulls go on after that, for a year and a half without Michael Jordan. And that year that he comes back, he's really not in shape. And I'm going to get into that. I just, but that's, so you're telling me like those year and a half, the 2 years that he played half of the one season, but you're going to tell me that there wasn't a good chance that they could have won those 2 years as well? They essentially had the same team, plus and minus some guys that came in later on. But the last recap show I discussed the secret suspension. Was it a secret suspension? Who knows? And I didn't think they were going to talk about it in the documentary, but that was the thing that they brought up right after talking about his retirement. Because I mean, if it happened or if it didn't happen, who knows? But it's something that everybody should say why to. Like why? Obviously, his father was a big, like he had a big impact on his life. And you'd understand, yeah, okay. He struggled with that. And you understand that. But it's just, it's something that, you could question. Was it a secret suspension? Who knows? He had a lot of things going on at that time. So, he shocks the world, retires. Then he shocks the world again and signs to the Chicago White Sox. And then at that time, that's even more crazy. And I said, was it a secret suspension? And at the time, was it, he needed a distraction and I'm going to play baseball. And the thing about that was, he signs playing baseball, but then it's like, all right, he actually had to get into baseball shape because it's two different shapes. You have to get into two different shapes for baseball and basketball. It's two different sports. You're using you're using all different muscles in different places. And he's playing the outfield. So you actually see in the documentary, the trainer said, hey, listen, I need to know, what position are you playing? And, I need to know if you're planning on going back to basketball because this is a totally different training regimen that we have to go over. And that's what ends up happening. Michael's like, I'm taking baseball. I'm all about baseball. So, altogether, it was interesting to see the background, the behind the scenes part of his retirement, and just altogether with baseball, he signs with the White Sox, and then, usually, because Reinsdorf actually is the owner of the White Sox as well, and he's like, usually at that time, a guy coming in, you're not putting him at Double-A yet, unless he's an unbelievable, and even at that time, like, yeah, you don't usually put him at Double-A, but they had to put him at Double-A because they had to accommodate the press, because press was everywhere. It's Michael Jordan. Then he starts out with a 13-game hitting streak. And you're like, wow, maybe this is something. And you constantly hear these guys say, if he stuck with baseball, he was definitely going to make the majors. Struggled, yeah. I mean, he batted 202 that year. But that the 94 strike in baseball hits, and they started to use replacement players, and they asked, and he said, no, I'm not doing it. And then he ends up, making his way back to basketball and comes back that year after. And, it just, you have to question, if the strike didn't happen in baseball, would he have come back to basketball? Or would he have, stuck with baseball and gritted that all the way out? That's a whole different story if we're talking about that. No strike happens. Michael Jordan becomes a baseball player, stays a baseball player. You don't see the next three-peat that Michael Jordan gets. You don't see him get 6 rings. You don't see any of that. And we're not talking about him being the greatest of all time. Yeah, he might have been the greatest of all time at that time where he won the three-peat at first before the retirement. But are we still talking about the three-peat? Because are we still talking about him being a GOAT after that? Because then you have Kobe that wins 5. You have all these other guys. Bill Russell has 10. You're talking about LeBron. You're talking about all of these guys. So it's definitely a question to be asked. It's definitely a nice debate to talk about. It's something to talk about, especially now with no sports going on. But, life without Jordan. The first year without Jordan, the Bulls went 55-27. They lost to the Knicks in the Eastern Conference semis. And they talk about that one play in Game 3 where Pippen sits out of the final play. And there's a little bit more to that story because they don't bring it up in the documentary. But the play before Ewing hits the tying shot, Pippen had a chance to really ice the game. And when he came up, he let the shot clock run out, and he airballs the shot. But you see he's visibly upset at Tony Kukoc because he didn't clear out. So that all added to the whole thing, and then, of course, Phil Jackson draws up a play for Tony Kukoc. So it all added up. If you don't know about that whole thing, you should definitely look it up. Phil Jackson actually talked about it in the book that he wrote or something. So that was interesting. I didn't know that until I started researching some of the stuff, and I saw that, and I thought that was interesting. And then you start to see Michael Jordan as the teammate. The teammates that were a part of the documentary, they all said, he was a jerk. They were fearful of him. He loves to win, and if you're not all in, in this sport, he's going to give you a hard time. And he needs his teammates to feel the same way that he does, which, it's very hard because not everybody is wired the same way. But, just all together, you start to see like, oh yeah, he's a jerk, this, that. But you know what? If it wasn't for him doing all of this stuff, these guys wouldn't have rings. So you have to thank him, and all of them do. Some of them are a little upset. I would see, a little upset, especially, the way that Horace Grant was depicted in this documentary. The way that Michael Jordan said that he was the snitch, this and that with the whole Sam Smith book. But you start to see towards the end of episode 7 what it does to Michael. What winning does to him. And I thought the ending scene of episode 7 was one of the strongest things that you could ever see out of Michael Jordan. And like one of the strongest scenes that you can see in all of sports, just seeing the raw emotion. And I have the whole clip. I think it's like a 3-minute clip of just his whole the whole ending of that episode. And I mean, it gives you chills. So here's the ending of episode 7.
Through the years, you think that intensity has come at the expense of being perceived as a nice guy?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, winning has a price. And leadership has a price. So I pulled people along when they didn't want to be pulled. I challenge people when they don't want to be challenged. And I earned that right because my teammates came after me. They didn't endure all the things that I endured.
Michael Jordan is down in pain. Michael Jordan got taken out. He's hurt. And Jordan came down hard and is injured. Just as the moved on, but you really got a feel for this man right here. I mean, playing his heart out.
Once you join the team, you live at a certain standard that I played the game. And I wasn't going to take any less. Now, that means I had to go in there and get in your ass a little bit, and I did that. You ask all my teammates, one thing about Michael Jordan was he never asked me to do something that he didn't do. When people see this, they're going to say, well, he wasn't really a nice guy. He may have been a tyrant. Oh, well, that's you, because you never wanted anything. I wanted to win, but I wanted them to win and be a part of that as well. Look, I don't have to do this. I'm only doing it because it is who I am. That's how I played the game. That was my mentality. If you don't want to play that way, don't play that way. Break.
I mean, there's only one word to like describe that whole thing, and it's amazing. I mean, it's unbelievably amazing, that scene. And it's like a minute, maybe 2 minute scene, maybe 3. Right now I got chills, and I'm not even watching it. Like, you know, when everybody gets to watch this on YouTube, you'll be actually able to. And I've watched it multiple times, because the way I've been doing this recap show, I've been watching the episodes, like, you know, like everybody else, live, and then I watch it again. And then I start to take my notes to talk about. I can't tell you how many times I've watched this scene, and it still gives me the same reaction. And it's unbelievable, awesome. I mean, there's so many words that you could describe this, but the best one is amazing. And, you know, after that, obviously we get to episode 8, and you start to see and I was noticing as we were going along with this whole documentary, Michael Jordan's motivation is unlike anything else. You know, Michael Jordan regularly is one of the greatest basketball players, if not the greatest basketball player alive. In my eyes, he's the greatest. But when he takes it to that next level, when he gets that motivation just to get to that next level, because it's like, you know what? I'm great at this point. I'm better than everybody else. But I need something else to get me to that next level. And he always got to that next level. A level that nobody else goes to. But he uses motivation towards that. And there's different things, and I was noticing just different things that he used. Whether somebody said something to him, whether somebody done something to him, whatever it was. So like in this episode, you start to see the whole B.J. Armstrong one. B.J. Armstrong playing for the Hornets at the time. Obviously, after playing with the Bulls and winning championships with the Bulls, he goes on to the Hornets. They play the Bulls in the playoffs. And game 2, B.J. Armstrong ends up winning the game for the Hornets, talks trash here and there, and that turned the whole series around. He used that as motivation. Like, listen, don't get me to that point. And you did it. And he went off. The same thing with this guy, LeBradford Smith. Not many people know who he was. At the time, I didn't know who he was until I started to look it up. So he has one of the best, if not the greatest game that he's ever had in his career against Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan didn't have that great of a game. So at the end of the game, LeBradford Smith says, "Nice game, Mike." And he had 37 throughout the whole game. 37 points. So that it was like a switch. He said, "Nice game, Mike." That's it. Nice game, Mike. And it was a switch. And unfortunately for LeBradford Smith, they had a back-to-back, a home and home. So the next night they were playing at their home. So Jordan goes, "I'm going to have what he had in the whole game. I'm going to have it in the first half." And he had 36. His main goal was to embarrass whoever, quote-unquote, embarrassed him. He says he didn't want anybody to make a name off of him. And that's just, that's a whole nother way of thinking about things. An amazing way of thinking about things. That's what gets you to that point. Athletes, not every athlete has that. Yeah, you might be a professional, but you don't have that mindset. Not many, if any, had that kind of mindset. You say Kobe Bryant because, and I know I always go back to Kobe Bryant. It's just because he had the same mentality as Michael Jordan. Do I think Kobe had that type of, I need motivation kind of thing where, if you said one word wrong to me or you looked at me wrong, I'm going to use that as motivation? I don't think Kobe had that. I don't know. We'll see. He'll have a documentary out soon. Because the same documentary crew that did this filmed Kobe's last year. So I'm interested to see that one when that comes out. But, that was his goal. He didn't want anybody embarrassing him. So he had to embarrass you before you did that to him. And obviously, Jordan retires. He comes back, but comes back as number 45. And he comes back as number 45. And I always wondered this. I could have probably looked it up, but it really didn't matter to me. I loved, I have the 45 jersey, and people that don't realize look at me weird. And it's like, come on, dude. He came back as 45. So he returns as number 45. And he didn't want to wear number 23 because of his father. I didn't know that. And I thought that was interesting. That was something that I really wanted to find out throughout this, documentary. He didn't want to wear it because his father saw him play his quote-unquote last game, and it was as 23, and he wanted to change it up. So he had 45, gets into the playoffs. Also, 45 was his first number in high school. Then he gets into the playoffs, against the Magic, Horace Grant's Magic team. This is the year, Michael Jordan wasn't in basketball shape, as I was talking about before. He wasn't in basketball shape. So he was, gassing at the end of, that season. And especially in that series, he struggled. Michael Jordan kind of struggling. But he ends up unretiring the number 23, brings it out, and, they end up losing that series. obviously, as I said, Michael Jordan, wasn't in basketball shape, but he used like the magic as motivation. He lost, didn't get to win a championship, so he used it as motivation. And that whole offseason, the Magic were on his mind. That was the driving force. And that year he was doing Space Jam during that offseason, but he needed to work out. So he told the production team, hey, listen, I'll do this, but I need a gym. And they actually built him a gym. And I mean, I'm in the film business, so I know how, everything works. And if the actor asks for something, they're going to give it to him. And it's Michael Jordan, so they absolutely. So they built him a gym, and he started to invite NBA stars after, filming days. He would film in the morning, work out, and then have these NBA stars come out to have scrimmages against. And he used it to get in shape, to work with other, young NBA stars, obviously who he's going to end up playing. But he also used it as recon. Like, he started to watch certain ways, like what players would do and this and that. And he used it as recon. And that year, they came out in a vengeance. They went 23-2 in their first 25 games. Obviously going on to win the 72 games. And they also talk about in this episode the infamous, punch to the face to Steve Kerr. And throughout that whole, thing, Michael Jordan, it was just kind of in the moment kind of thing. But he also started to respect Steve Kerr after that, because Steve Kerr didn't back down to him. So I thought that whole, where Steve Kerr told his side of the story, Michael Jordan told his side of the story, it was the same story, so it was nice to hear that. And, it was just, it was just a cool story to hear. Obviously, Steve Kerr getting punched is not cool, but, just the behind the scenes, like finding out things that nobody knew before. Obviously, everybody knew about the whole Kerr thing, but, the details to it. And then they end the episode with the 96 finals against the Sonics. And this goes along with what I was saying about the motivation. George Karl, the head coach of the Supersonics at the time, Jordan knew George Karl. They knew each other. They were friendly with each other, between the roots of North Carolina and this stuff. And he, Jordan was out to dinner with Ahmad Rashan, and I mean, they hung out a lot. And George Karl walks into the restaurant and totally ignores Michael. And right then and there, he used it as motivation. And, the rest is history. They end up smoking the Sonics. And Gary Payton thinks he did something, and Michael Jordan starts laughing, which is pretty funny. But also, as I was saying earlier, just seeing the raw emotion of Michael Jordan, was great in this, and it was interesting to see. It was impelling, and or compelling, impelling, something like that. And the fact that they end up winning the finals on Father's Day, and then you just see everything just kind of like just totally drop out, and you see him on the floor in the locker room, hysterical crying. You just see what everything does to him, what goes into everything that he puts into a season. And I thought it was amazing. I thought it was awesome. These two episodes were unbelievable. So, I if you haven't watched it, go watch it. Sorry for the spoiler alerts, but I thought it was a great 2 episodes. We got the final 2 episodes, coming up next week. I mean, I'm pretty upset that it's gonna end, basically. So that will do it for the Last Dance recap show, running up the score. I'm Jerry. Beat. Breezy.
You've been listening to The Last Dance Recap on Running Up the Score. For more Running Up the Score, go follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at RUTS Sports.